whispered Hub.
My name is Mary. I am from Spain. I came to London to learn English. English is very important for my future job. I did not know much English before coming here. I could say basic things like hello and thank you, but I could not have a real conversation. My first day in London was difficult. I got lost many times trying to find my school. People spoke so quickly. I could not understand most of what they said. Finally, I found the school. I met my teacher, Mrs. Johnson. She was very kind. In the class, there were students from all around the world. Mrs. Johnson started the class by speaking slowly and using simple words. I could understand her. She introduced herself and the class rules. Then she asked each student to introduce themselves. When it was my turn, I was so nervous. But Mrs. Johnson smiled and nodded as I spoke. That gave me confidence. After class, Mrs. Johnson approached me. "Don't worry about your English, Mary. It will get better quickly if you practice regularly," she said kindly. I felt relieved hearing those words from my teacher. I was determined to work hard and improve my English skills. The next day I arrived early at school. A Chinese student named Li Ming was already there. We started talking. "Nice to meet you, Mary. I'm from Beijing," Li Ming replied. His English was quite good. We kept chatting until other students arrived. I was happy to have my first English conversation outside of class. Li Ming was friendly and patient when I could not understand something. In class, Mrs. Johnson taught us some basic vocabulary related to daily life, words like home, family, food, etc. She asked us to use these new words in sentences. I struggled at first, but Li Ming helped me whenever I was stuck. I also helped him with words he didn't know. Slowly, I started feeling more comfortable speaking English with my classmates. Making friends made the learning process much easier and fun. A few weeks later, Mrs. Johnson started encouraging us to read simple books and stories in English. Reading, she said, is one of the best ways to learn new words and grammar. I was worried at first. How could I read books when I could barely speak English? But Mrs. Johnson assured me it would be fine if I started with very easy materials. So I bought some children's storybooks from a local bookstore. Whenever I encountered words I didn't know, I wrote them down to ask Mrs. Johnson later. Reading those simple stories was difficult initially, but I kept trying. Mrs. Johnson complimented me on my efforts and saw gradual improvement. Soon, I could read through an entire children's book without too many struggles. I felt a great sense of accomplishment. Mrs. Johnson explained that reading helps strengthen our understanding of English sentence structures. The more we read, the more natural English will start feeling to us. I decided to read at least one short children's book daily. My vocabulary was growing and I understood class lessons better too. After a couple of months, I could communicate fairly well in English with my classmates and teacher. But I still hesitated to speak much outside the classroom. One day, Li Ming invited me and some other students to join him for lunch at a nearby cafe. I was nervous but decided to give it a try. At the cafe, the server came to take our order. Li Ming looked at me and said, "Why don't you try ordering for us?" My heart started racing. What if I made a mistake? What if they didn't understand me? But Li Ming and the others encouraged me. So I took a deep breath and ordered sandwiches and drinks for everyone in my broken English. The server smiled, understood what I wanted, and repeated the order. I had done it. We all cheered happily. From that day, I made sure to practice speaking English as much as possible. With servers, shopkeepers, even strangers on the street. Sometimes I stuttered. Sometimes they didn't understand me initially. But I kept trying patiently. Little by little, my confidence grew tremendously. I was no longer afraid to speak up and use my English skills in the real world. About 6 months after I joined the English classes, Mrs. Johnson made an exciting announcement. "Students, you all have made such good progress with English. I'm very proud of you. To test how far you've come, each of you will give a short presentation in our next class. You can talk about any topic you like, your home country, hobbies, future dreams, etc." At first, the idea of giving a full presentation in English terrified me. But Mrs. Johnson said it would be great practice for real situations in our future careers. Li Ming and I decided to practice our presentations together after class. We worked on our scripts, helping each other rephrase confusing sentences. We also recorded ourselves and listened closely to identify areas for improvement. When the day arrived, I was the first to present. I spoke slowly, carefully, and with feeling about how learning English had changed my life. To my delight, my classmates understood everything I said. Some even had questions for me at the end. After the class, Mrs. Johnson hugged me proudly. "You were wonderful, Mary. Look how far your English has come in such a short time." I beamed with joy and pride. My hard work and determination had paid off tremendously. The presentation boosted my confidence tremendously in using English. But I knew my learning journey was far from over. I started reading short novels, watching English TV shows and movies, listening to podcasts, basically surrounding myself with as much English as possible. Whenever I came across something I didn't understand fully, I made notes. I also continued having conversations with locals to improve my spoken English. Some days were harder than others. But I never got disheartened. I knew that's just how language learning worked, full of little successes and failures. Li Ming and I even started a habit of writing letters to each other in English. We would then correct each other's letters, helping identify errors and slip-ups. Mrs. Johnson was delighted to see my dedication. She guided me on what areas to focus on next as my skills kept growing. As the months passed, I could see tangible progress in how effortlessly English started feeling. The language no longer intimidated me. Finally, after 2 years of hard work and persistence, I graduated from Mrs. Johnson's English classes. I could speak, read, write, and comprehend the language fluently now. Mrs. Johnson and my classmates threw a little party for me on my last day. There were hugs, laughs, and some happy tears too. "I'm so proud of you, Mary," Mrs. Johnson said with a warm smile. "You came here barely knowing any English. Now you can converse like a native speaker. Thank you for everything," I responded, my voice thick with emotion. "I could never have done this without your guidance and patience." After the party, Li Ming walked me home. "So what's next for you?" he asked. "I've already started applying for jobs here," I replied excitedly. "With my English skills, I'm confident I'll find something perfect soon." Li Ming grinned. "I just know you'll do amazingly well, Mary. I'm so glad we became friends on that first day of class." I gave him a tight hug. "Me too, Li Ming. Thank you for always being there for me." As I headed home that evening, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and gratitude. My life had changed so much ever since I arrived in London, and all because I chose to learn English. The language had opened up a whole new world of opportunities. I knew this was just the start of many more adventures and personal growth. I could not wait to see where this journey would take me next. But one thing was certain: no matter what, I would always keep learning, improving, and pushing myself. For English was no longer just a language to me. It was a companion for life that would always stay by my side.